Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I apologize for all these long introductions and all these things. Challenges. The best thing is to start with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we'll go from there. Let's say this. Let's make it this way. من الدنيا وأحسن كما أحسن الله إليك. يعني this balance between the dunya and the akhirah has always been a sought process. How do we balance the dunya with the akhirah? So obviously, you know, the philosophers have always gone to this. Some said, live the dunya because you only get to live once. So do what you need to do what you have to do, and maximize your opportunity. This is it. And this obviously came even in the book of Allah where Quraysh were mocking the Prophet ﷺ, and they're telling him, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ma hiya illa hayatuna dunya namutu wa nahya wa ma nahnu mab'uthin. It is only this dunya that we live. We live and die, and there's nothing called ba'ath, resurrection, all this nonsense. So live it. That there's another approach. This is one approach. Do whatever you want, as long as you don't get caught, you're okay. If you make it, you're good. You don't make it, you're bad, you lost. The other approach, they said, you know what, this dunya is khaba'ith. It is the mother of every khabith. Everything in it is khabith. Best is stay out of the whole dunya, go to some mountain, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't even talk to anybody, because when you talk to people by themselves, that will teach you how to lie. That will teach you how to cheat. That will teach you how to, because usually, I mean, where do people, and you don't learn lying from animals. Animals don't lie. You learn lying from your fellow human beings. So they said, you know, let me go to the mountain and let me just not even talk to people. It's better than to talk, live like this until you die. Khalas, Bismillah. We'll go to the next slide. But Islam always has a deen of wasatiyya, deen of moderation, comes always in the middle. Comes to tell you that now you should live in the akhirah, for the akhirah, but live in the dunya. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, don't forget your share in the dunya. So live for your akhirah, but don't forget your share in the dunya. In the sense of what? In the sense of being a good person, that this goodness that you do is geared towards the akhirah anyway. يعني when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, استعمركم فيها, about the al-ard, about earth, Allah says استعمركم فيها. استعمركم فيها means He asked you to do i'mar. استعمركم comes from i'mar. I'mar means to build. Yani what does that mean? Yani it means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked you to leave earth better than when you came to it. This is your mission as a human being. When you depart, you have left it better than when you came. That's the point of it. That's what Allah says, استعمركم فيها. He demanded of you that you actually contribute positively to it. So then when you go and you meet your Creator, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're all going, all of us are going. And no matter who you are, no matter how young or old, you know, rich or poor, whatever it is you are, we're all going. It's a matter of departure. It's a matter of time. You're sitting or you're standing on an assembly line and the line is moving. Now, if you realize it's moving, that's one thing. If you don't realize it's moving, you got double problems. A problem where you don't read. The problem is where you don't prepare and you don't realize that it's moving. Anyway, they want me to talk about the challenges for our youth in this century. I don't think that the Ummah has really been in the past maybe 200 years or so in a situation like it is today. For many kinds, on many levels, and many aspects. And that's among the وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Like this dunya is not for the dunya. The Quran Kareem, when he tells you, don't forget your share in the dunya, it's not telling you, indulge in the dunya as if there's no akhirah. Indulge in the dunya as if there is akhirah. You see, the Quran doesn't tell you, or Sunnah doesn't tell you, don't be wealthy. No, don't be wealthy. Bismillah, Sayyidina Uthman al-Ghani, we call Sayyidina Uthman al-Ghani, right? Sayyidina Uthman was wealthy. Sayyidina Abdul Rahman bin Auf was wealthy. لا, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala was wealthy. At the beginning, before he became a Khalifa. When he became the Khalifa, he didn't have any money. It's the other way around today. Usually you don't have any money. Once you become the Khalifa, then you make money. No, Sayyidina Abu Bakr was from the other generation. So, all these Sahaba didn't actually have wealth. Like the difference between them and us, money was not in their heart, it was in their pocket. So Islam wants you to keep money, but keep it down in your pocket. Don't bring it to your heart. That's the whole point. If that's what you like, you don't want money, then don't want money. It's freedom. Islam believes in that freedom. Personal freedom of yours that you ought to have. The challenges we have, I believe in today, and I don't want to make this too long for you, obviously, are two main challenges. I believe that the Muslim youth and the Muslim Ummah will be facing this century. Again, even saying this century, I have a problem with lately, because of Al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's hadith that he mentions tasawwur al-zaman, or the acceleration of time. What does that mean? Acceleration of time simply means that things that the time, let me put it this way. If you look at the beginning, from the beginning of time until now, from Adam alayhi salam, let's say, although we don't really have an authentic and a riwayah sahiha, an authentic narration to tell us exactly when was Adam alayhi salam first on earth. We don't have that. Like in some of us, maybe Israeliyat as well. They say 6,000 years. Don't take that number seriously, but put it in the back of your mind. It's not sahih, so I don't like to defend on anything that's not authentic. But we don't have anything authentic to substantiate that anyway. So I know, because biologists, they say millions of years, and these Israeli narrations, they say 6,000, so it's a big gap. But anyway, whatever it is. From the beginning of Adam alayhi salam until maybe 100 years ago or so, the world was really the same thing. People commuted with horses. And electricity was not there any 150 some years ago. Phones were not there. Planes were not there. Cars were not there. Life was pretty much وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. النهار, during the day you live, you do go about your ma'ash, your living. The night time, libasa, Allah says, as a garment, you sleep, you calm down. Today, obviously, we reverse many things. There is no ma'ash in the day and night. We're running day and night and we're still not catching up. So all this time, the things were pretty much the same. Hatta family life, family values, more or less, for thousands of years, until maybe 200 years ago, 100 years ago or so, was the same. Wherever you go, it doesn't, not only in the Arab world, you say Arab values, or in India, you say Indian values. No, even if you had gone to Europe and to America, obviously, a few hundred years ago, the the US, which did not exist per se as the US. But you know, if you go to the European continent at that time, they had values, conservative values. And I ask people in the US, they say, well, the way things used to be in 1950, not the same that used to be, that are now today in 2014. Value, social value-wise, things change everywhere. In the past 100 or 200 years, everything now changed very rapidly. The introduction of the means of communication, even, you know how you send mail in the old days, you have to send people. Those of you who are old enough, you remember there was actual traditional post office where you write letter and, you know, the postman takes it, and if you are lucky, it gets to where it needs to go. Otherwise, you know, it may be lost. And it takes it so many days, so many weeks, so many months to get sometimes to some place. Today we have something called email. Now even email, it might be slow, now they text message, tick, and enter it there. This is from the Tasawwuf acceleration. If you look at the past now, this is that 6,000, 7,000 years, 200 years. Everything changed, the whole world changed. How we live changed, everything changed. If you look at the past 20 years, compared with the past 200 years, acceleration is even heightened. And now we're looking in the past 2-3 years, right? Maybe our generation in 10 years cannot even understand how the world will be running anyway. We're getting to a point where things are just beyond comprehension. So anyway, if we look at the whole progression of humanity from the beginning till the end, you actually can see now what the Prophet ﷺ was talking about, tasawwur al-zaman, or the acceleration of time. Things are happening much faster in a shorter span of life, in a shorter span of time. And maybe this is, again, physically speaking, and physically from a physicist, from physics point of view, obviously, again, they speak about the acceleration of time itself as a creation of Allah anyway. So, you know, that space and time, the dynamics of physics until the day of judgment, and إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا, right? وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا. That whole thing, there's that acceleration that has to match everything that's happening. Anyway, it's an inevitable thing. The whole point to mention is I don't really dare to say the challenges in the century, because maybe things don't last a century. Only Allah knows how things are lasting and where we're going from which phase to the next phase. And what is the next phase? How will humanity behave? How people behave? It's becoming almost unpredictable, and not necessarily in a nice way. Well, I mean, not necessarily in a nice way, because humanity is still suffering from the same old animalistic desires that has, that has sort of shackled humanity. I mean, we're going back as كل شيء يرجع إلى أصله. It seems like, in that sense, those who obviously have not been polished with the book and the Sunnah. Khair. I think among the challenges that we will face are two major challenges, and so we can also finish and then we'll open if you have any questions, we'll dialogue. The first question I believe we're going to face in this 21st Gregorian century will be international terrorism. In my view, this will only increase. In other words, violence will increase in the name of religion, specifically in the name of our religion. If you think you've seen the worst, I don't have a crystal ball telling me what will happen, and nobody knows what will happen. It's just an estimation and a prediction, and may Allah Jalla Jalaluhu makes me wrong. But I think it's only going to get worse. Violence will increase, and violence will breed violence. That's usually how it is. Violence breeds more violence, and it takes, it's very easy to destroy, but it's very difficult to build. And I'm not talking about buildings here. I'm talking about the human character and humanity within the human being. It takes you ages to build humanity within the human being, and it takes you few days to turn that human being into an animal again. In the sense of acting the way that things have happened. So anyway, unfortunately, I think Muslims, regardless where they live in, obviously, alhamdulillah, Allah bless you in India, you have a peaceful country and you live in a good environment, and may Allah keep it peaceful and good for you and for everybody. But surely you will be affected by what happens in the world, because you don't live on Mars, you still live in the world. And obviously you've had a few issues also a few years ago, I believe. That violence will remain, I think, will be a case in this century, 21st, if we may say. How long of it, I don't know. But I feel it will be a strong case that they will try to always associate Islam with violence. To basically present the case that Islam is a violent and intolerant religion. It does not accept others. Everybody else needs to die, and only we ought to live. And not just we, even within Islam, which we, depending on your jama'ah or your cult or your group that gives you the keys to Jannah and closes the door of Jannah for everybody else that says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So we're obviously, because the downfall of the Ummah, academically speaking, comes because of the knowledge of the crisis in knowledge to start with. Alright? So obviously, I mean, you know, it's not a secret that academically speaking, and also spiritually as well, the Ummah has been going down for a while. I mean, obviously nobody is talking about the numbers of Muslims. We're talking about how the Ummah used to be and how the Ummah is, academic production-wise and spiritual change-wise. Today, we stand obviously facing a serious challenge, convincing non-Muslims that Islam is a religion of mercy and compassion. That Islam actually does offer you hope and opportunity for redemption, regardless who you are. Because they'll tell you, why don't you transform? If your religion is so great, why hasn't it transformed you? What, do you want to sell me theory? Oh, you want to sell me rituals? So, mechanical aspect of worship. So come and just do, this is the list of do's, this is the list of don'ts, do this, don't do this, you're a good Muslim. And some people into rituals, not everybody is. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ brought people into Islam as a holistic approach, ritual and spiritual, not just ritual. He gave them a hope spiritually. He revived their heart spiritually. He internalized mercy before he offered it to others. Sahaba were people of mercy, were these things. People were transformed by the model that was provided for them. Because you get transformed through modeling, not through words. Observational learning is the most intense and lasting way of learning. Observational, that is, not informational. Information rarely leads to transformation because it needs realization. Obviously, we talked about this. So the first thing, unfortunately, is violence, and we all have to learn how to deal with it. We have to learn how to deal with it, and obviously, we as the Muslim Ummah, from Islamic perspective, I believe that Islam has nothing to do with violence. I believe that, in fact, fundamentally, the message of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was to declare war on all kinds of violence. Verbal, physical, and you name it. Yani obviously every violence starts with verbal violence. What does that mean? It means before people actually commit actual acts of violence, they first verbally violate the rights of others. That you don't take that leap before. In other words, what does that mean? Obviously, then they consider them less than you don't have the right to live. You strip them from the rights that Allah gave them. You strip them from anything and all these things. So now they're demonized in your eye. Once you demonize anyone in your eye, it's just a small leap to say what's prohibiting you from doing actual violence is the law or someone seeing you. Other than that, you have no problem. Because now you came to the intellectual argument that he doesn't really deserve to live. He's evil. All evil. As if you are all angelic. Yani malaika. You are malaika, he's shaitan. But with this understanding, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if he had this understanding, he wouldn't have been able to teach these idol worshippers how to become great people. That Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gave hope to people even if they were worshipping idols. In fact, he remained in Mecca the first half of his messengerhood, announcing the message, which was 13 years, and people were still worshipping idols. And he was giving them da'wah and being with them and opening dialogues with them and affording them mercy and compassion, etc., 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 etc. The problem with the violence that unfortunately Islam is being labeled with, it's not really Islam. In the 83 battles, 80-some battles, if you want to say 81 or 83, whatever, that the Prophet ﷺ was forced to engage in, it was less than 1,000 people or so killed on all sides. And Nabi ﷺ always tried to avoid anything that leads to bloodshed. That's what the Malaika said from the beginning. When Allah told them, إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, I am making a Khalifa or representative on earth. They said, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. Ya Allah, you will be appointing these human beings, basically the meaning of the ayah. And these human beings, what they do is corruption and bloodshed. Alright. So our deen did not come to actually kill people or do violence to those who don't agree with it. Yani you don't see Allah sending any prophet with weapons of mass destruction. If they don't believe in you, kill them all. وَقُلِ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ إِنَّا أَعْتَدْنَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ نَارًا أَحَاطَ بِهِمْ سُرَادِقُهَا. Anyway, surely there will be amongst Muslims some people who do commit to violent acts. We are human beings. We Muslims have different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different political views. We are like any other social fabric of any society as human beings. We do have amongst us the good, we have the bad, and we also have the ugly, just like anybody else. We have people who commit crimes. We have people who commit violence again. But also the Ummah has lots of khair in it. So to label Islam as a religion that is violent and inherently intolerant is a gross misrepresentation of our deen, and therefore we have to engage in these things and try to preempt a wider labeling of the entire Ummah. And that's throughout our pulpits and throughout our educational systems and madrasas and Islamic universities and all these things, and trying to focus that Islam separates, well, we have to unfortunately separate the religion from the religious. what the religious do is not necessarily what the religions say. By default, we as human beings, we are imperfect anyway, and we are by default much less compassionate than our religion is, because we always like to make it exclusive and close doors, and the religion, the Quran and the Sunnah, the religion is the Quran and the Sunnah, always opens the door and make it more exclusive, more inclusive. We are much less willing to forgive, but the religion tells us that Allah is always willing to forgive. We are not willing to forget, but the religion gives us redemption. So there's always this, and what it means, obviously, it comes down to the crisis in knowledge and the systems of Islamic education that we devised 2, 3, 4, 500 years ago, whatever, and we still use them today. Remember that 2, 3, 400 years ago, most of Muslims, wherever they are, mostly they were illiterate, unlettered people. I'm not sure about India, but I know in the Arab world, 60, 70 years ago, a good 50% of the population could not read or write. Today, everybody reads and writes. Everybody goes to university, and your 10-year-old child Googles things up. Things have changed, and we need to adapt to the demand of the time. So that's one aspect of looking at this challenge. Again, I believe, unfortunately, violence will continue and will actually get worse. And we have to be careful of how to sort of deal with these things and ensure that we give our people hope, and that religion came to give people hope even if they're hopeless, even if they're bad, even if they're evil. Because the point of the religion is to give opportunity to those who don't have opportunity, and to give hope to those who are hopeless. Rest assured that violence that's being committed in the name of Islam, the most victims of it are Muslims, no one else. Why? So it's a double-edged sword. One, you get blamed for it. Another one, Muslim youth get killed in the process. Muslim families get stranded in the process. Yet you're still blamed for it. It's funny how that works. Obviously, I mean, today if you look up the United Nations statistics, you'll find that Muslims are the largest numbers of victims of violence in the world today. The largest number of victims of violence in the world. Muslims today also constitute the largest numbers of refugees due to violence in the world, according to the United Nations. Also, if you look at the statistics, Muslims are the largest number of victims of wars in the world. Wars that did not really opt to be involved in or choose. Yet still the world looks at Muslims as a disruption to an otherwise calm, peaceful, and content world. So that's an irony, but that's a reality. So it's the point of sitting before an irony and just laughing about it is not really the point. The point is a reality, and what do you do about the reality? All right? So that requires, obviously, an approach to violence, and obviously requires, people who actually even still spread hate speeches. We succumb into a level where it makes us feel better if we put other people down. So the focus about instead of improving ourselves vis-a-vis the Creator, perfecting our own actions, perfecting our own spirituality, perfecting our own a'mal, we compare ourselves with someone we don't like and we say, Alhamdulillah, we are doing good because they're going to Jannah and I'm, Alhamdulillah, doing well. This kind of skewed vision and short and narrow-minded, short-sighted vision, that's not going to help us before the Creator, because we'll be surprised before us. So there's an overhaul that's needed. And again, I don't have a solution. Sorry, I I'm just speaking about the challenges, are not magic pills, are not magic solutions. It's something that all of us and all Muslims everywhere ought to come and think, what can we do? Obviously to prevent hate speeches, to make sure that, hate is not peddled under the name of religion, to make sure that walls of hate are not erected under the name of mercy and love or sunnah, all these things that people try to use to justify either hate or verbal violence against others. That's very important. That the job of the establishment, before it tells me that everybody else is going to Jahannam, to teach me how I can perfect myself externally and internally so I can be eligible to go to Jannah. To put values in the society on a practical manner, not in a dogmatic, informational matter. To form a community like the Prophet ﷺ formed a community of Sahaba. Not to make the deen a career. And a career means I need to keep my job, whatever it takes. I don't really care. I need to live. My children need to live. There are many ways you can live. Allah does not, as long as you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will for you to remain alive, Allah will provide for you. So there are many challenges with this, and I fear the challenge is going to go further up, and unfortunately, or further down as far as violence, and unfortunately more Muslim youth. It's a vicious cycle, and more Muslim youth will be drawn in this cycle. And this is only this is like the Quran says, وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. It's a fire fueled by people and stones. That's one aspect and one challenge. And how do we deal with that? What do we do? You live here also. You have your neighbors are from different faith systems. Obviously, you have your neighbors are Hindus. You have your neighbors who are Christians. I saw some Christian churches here as well. All these things. How do you model Islam to your neighbors? So number one, they realize that you actually are an asset. You are an asset to even their community being a Muslim. You are an asset of peace. You are an asset of good wisdom. You are an asset of unconditional compassion, even if they don't believe in our faith. That you are, as an Indian, part of the wider society. You are not just an asset to yourself, but you are actually an asset to every single one that lives around you, that is in your society. You know the weak hadith that has a weak sanad, that Sayyidah Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha talks about the neighbors, the huquq of neighbors. She goes 40 neighbors this way, 40 neighbors that way, 40 neighbors this way, 40 neighbors that way. If we just look at this, we don't even know our next door neighbor. 40 neighbors, what are you talking about? Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha was living in a different time. Because again, Islam's watan or homeland is Jannah. Islam's homeland is Jannah. That's where you came from. And that's where you will go. While you are on this transitional period, you are actually to model your faith of what the values that came from Jannah to the people on earth. So you give them a view of Jannah, not a view of Jahannam. You don't want to burn people. You want to tell them, no, there is hope for you. And there's opportunity for you. And Allah is Rahim and Rahman. In other words, obviously we need to stop the progression of our deen becoming fragmented into cult systems. Today, we have a cult mentality often. I don't know about here, I'm talking in general. Huh? This is my first time in India, so generally we have a cult mentality now developing lately. Every few people, they say we are the only people, huh? And the muftah of Jannah is only in our hands. I'm talking about abstruse, minute formulations that they come up with, and they make them the criterion of true faith, rather than the qat'i, or the definitive principles that came in the book and the authentic sunnah. No. We take a small thing, and we say, this small thing that I like, even though it may be a difference in interpretation, there may be rooms for seeing it differently from an academic lens, not from a layman lens, not from an academic lens. We make these secondary issues on top of the main fundamental principles of faith. We make them as the true criterion of faith. If you believe like me, then you are good. If you don't, then you go to Jahannam. I don't care who you are. Therefore, there's no way we can offer people, others, not Muslims, hope, if we ourselves deprive each other of hope. Before we offer mercy and compassion to others of this deen, we need to internalize this, not just memorize. Yes. As-Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in did not memorize the Quran entirely. Not all of them anyway. But guess what they did? They internalized the Quran. They were walking Qurans. Rather than, today we memorize from the beginning till the end. And in Ramadan we read it 3 times. The whole book. From Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, all the way to Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas. No internalization. You can read it 50 times, no problem. Memorization. The focus today is on memorization, not internalization. The focus today is on information, not on transformation. There's no transformation. In fact, we're leaving the deen behind and we're running as far as we can from the deen to emulate everyone who's deenless. Thinking that that's a better habit. That must, since they're doing it, it must be good. Hadith Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, la tattabi'una sunana man qablikum. Hadith sahih, hadith. You shall follow the sunnah of those before you. Yani Yahud wa Nasara. Even if they go to a lizard's hole, you will follow. It's blind. أَفَمَنْ يَمْشِي مُكِبًّا عَلَى وَجْهِهِ. You walk and you're looking down, you're not looking up anymore. Again, so there has to be some, we need today, Islamic universities, we need think tanks, we need thinkers, we need people, we need media experts. We don't need an emotional reaction to things. We need an intellectual reaction, or sorry, I shouldn't use the word reaction. We need an intellectual thought and presentation of the movement of the Muslim Ummah and how we can actually help and safeguard the Muslim youth everywhere. We need scholarship today. I don't mean by scholarship the way we Muslims have lately done it for the past few hundred years, where we practically, not theoretically, but practically, really, we actually consider scholarship the mere ability to regurgitate memorized information. If you regurgitate memorized information in 6 years, mashallah, you're a scholar. By that definition, Maulana Google is the best scholar. Because nobody can actually memorize the same information as Maulana Yahoo. Maulana Google. قدس الله سره لا عزيز الغير عزيز. That's a joke. When did ever scholarship become the mere ability to regurgitate memorized info? When is that? That's not scholarship. Content is only the beginning of scholarship. There's content, there's context, there's application. It's not just content. But obviously even content we don't have anymore today when we refer to scholarship. Content is incomplete. That's why obviously you say there cannot be anything like that, but there's nothing in the Quran to say anything like that. Where are people like Shaykh Ninowy, Ahmad bin Abd al-Rahim, rahimahullah ta'ala? Where are they? Why can't there be? Yani what? Allah decreed that the women who gave birth to people like that no longer exist. Or the emphasis and the mechanics and the structure and the value system changed. So we can't produce people like this anymore. There's a problem, and we have to look into these things. Again, unfortunately, the increasing violence in the world and Muslims being labeled with it will lead me to the next challenge. Because this is a challenge by itself. Why? Non-Muslims, innocent non-Muslims, innocent in the sense they don't know anything about Islam, they will start having hateful feelings and sentiments towards Muslims. Frightened. What are you going to do? It changes the hearts of people. It makes your job of dawah even more difficult. Because there already is a barrier anyway. Everywhere they go, they think these people are crazy. But look at it, I mean, this point Islam came with the sword, obviously, I view it as erroneous. I mean, everywhere that Muslims went with the sword, they were out. And everywhere that Muslims went with the heart, they remained in. They went to Spain with the sword, they got out. They went to Indonesia and Malaysia with the heart, they're still in the hearts. They came to India with the hearts. And among the mottos of Muhammad was love, offering them mercy, offering them all these things. Still today we have 250-some million Muslims in India. But you see that what that will do will lead us to the next problem, and he let me finish also, so I don't also stay here talking to you for a long time. You probably already tired of me doing that. Let me say the second challenge will be atheism. I know we don't like to think of it. I come from the West, so I've been living there for almost 30 years. There will be rising numbers of Muslims turning into atheists, in my view. Again, just like for the first one, violence that's increasing, and I hope Allah makes me wrong in this. I ask Allah to make me wrong in this prediction as well. But I see it, and I can't help not call it. Rising number of atheists, those who would reject the whole faith altogether. I tell you, I have actually personally met people. Last year, someone came to me in New Jersey, in the United States, while I was at a conference, a youth conference, and told me that this young man memorized the Quran, half of the book of Allah. Yes. He says, I don't believe in Allah or His Rasul or anything. Now you might say, you know what? The West is too materialistic, and there's no spirituality, there is no culture, there is no whatever. There's all these things there as well, by the way. And that's what's happening there. It's not going to happen here. Think again. Remember at the beginning I mentioned about the acceleration of time? Today the whole world is a global village. Literally is a village. What happens in the US affects you right here in Bangalore. The kids that grow up here in India, guess where they're learning from? All the social media that they're in touch with, all these TVs that are bombarding you, all these TV channels, all this information. If not, when you go to universities, when you go to colleges, you are exposed to vast amount of information. Everyone is modeling the same thing. Today, people eat the same, dress the same. I don't care if they're Indians or Chinese or Europeans. Everyone is acting the same, drinking the same, eating the same, more or less. using the same words, the same logic. The whole world is being dominated by one culture, more or less. Pretty soon, all these little cultural differences that we had, as Arabs, for example, I come from the Arab world initially, and you as Indians and others, there's no more difference. You can see it. Imagine there's 20 years, 30 years down the line. All the cultural barriers are gone. And they're going to go, and they're going to melt more. Now, when people see these things, obviously, you know what happened to Christianity in the West. Christianity was revered in the West. I mean, Christianity, the church ruled Europe, as you all know. I mean, the Pope was the big man ruling the whole thing in Europe. Countries were under his wing. But eventually, because the church refused to succumb to reform, it became too big of an establishment and too arrogant because it was too powerful. When you're powerful, you become arrogant. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى أَنْ رَآهُ اسْتَغْنَى, Allah says. Which means once you feel you are wealthy, you become a tyrant. Stagna, you don't need anyone. Yatala, Allah says, which means you become a tyrant. Pharaoh, you act like Pharaoh, just because you think now you have power and money. Insan, only insan. Unless, except those who Allah gives them rahman, saves them from this. Anyway, so you all know what happened to the church of Christianity, right? I mean, you have Martin Luther, who came and tried to do the Lutheran movement and put these 99 things on the door of the church. You need to reform to the Catholic Church. If you don't reform, we're going to split and things are going to go bad. They wanted to kill the man because he's trying to reform them. To them, it means I have to lose my job. To the mullah mafia of the Christianity at that time. Right? Also, they have a mafia. It's a mafia. So they refused to reform. The Lutherans split in the John Calvin movement. The Calvinists split and came the Church of England, split from the Catholic Church, etc. And all these splitting, now we have many firqa within Christianity. And guess then what happened to Christianity in Europe? People are either, in a sense, many of them, either atheists per se or practically non-religious at all. When you go to churches in Europe today, you don't see people there. Churches are empty. Those people with critical pens and hateful pens, sometimes, they haven't done anything yet. They haven't even started. Muslim youth today are affected by what Richard Dawkins writes about neo-atheism. They're affected by Sam Harris. They're affected by Hawkins. They're affected by those people that they read, Nietzsche's Death of God's Business, all that stuff. And people now, because they go to universities, it's not 100 years ago in India, where most of the people were unlettered and they were in a small village, and whatever the Maulana of the village said goes. People now go to universities, they read, and they try to learn from those cultures or nations that are perceived to be superior or more advanced. That's just inevitable. But among the things that come with those from cultures that are also free is the ability to choose a faith. And not only that, to be critical of the faith. We're not equipped. Our clergies are not equipped to deal with the arguments of Hawkins and Dawkins based on our Dars al-Nizami that we do in India, or based on our Azhar system or others yet. We don't have people who yet, there are some people obviously everywhere. I'm not saying there aren't. The institution itself can, Al-Azhar can, and the institution that produce scholars, they can, but we're not there. We're not equipped yet with the clergy industry as it is today to address the challenge of the time of atheism. Because we're not even equipped to address the challenge of spirituality in our faith system and stopping the hemorrhaging of fragmentation of the community. I mean, if they want to start at something, at least the cohesiveness within the ummah, not the cult system fragmentation and establishment. So a bigger challenge of atheism and dealing with multi-faith challenges and all these things and these arguments of physicists and chemists and biologists and all these people, we're not even close. Because even the content of our Islamic sciences is no longer there. Today we go for 5, 6, 10 years. We call this erroneously a alim course. I wonder which one studies 10 years and becomes a alim. Obviously it's beyond ridiculous in my view. When you go to a university, any university, you study to get a bachelor's degree 4 years in the US. I don't know about India. Also 4 years to get a bachelor's degree? Alright. So for 3 years. In the US it's 4 years to get a bachelor's degree in physics, let's say. Then in order for you to do a master's degree, you do 2 or 3 years on top of that. So that's 7 years to get a master's degree in physics. If you have 7 years of studying physics in an undergraduate level and a graduate level, 7 years, then they make you may be eligible to teach physics. Nobody considers you a scholar in physics. You're just a teacher in physics, sir. And you're a beginning teacher in physics, sir. Beginning, not end level. That's 7 years. If you go and do another 3, 4 years PhD with the thesis and all that, so you have 10 years studying, they tell you that's the beginning of scholarship. Now you may be considered a scholar in physics based on continuous research and continuous production and discovery in the world of physics. Today, once we leave the madrasa or we leave Al-Azhar, we look at the books, Assalamu alaikum, we'll see you in Jannah inshallah, because right now I have to do my work. I am not saying that's wrong, but that's a clergy job. Today, the crisis of knowledge goes to where we mix the roles of scholars with preachers, yani wa'ad versus ilm, with students of knowledge, with activists, with public speakers, with amusing orators, with ambitious wannabes. We bundle them all up and we say, Bismillah, mashallah, al-alim, fulani, so. That 10 years in physics makes that person a beginning scholar. Nobody will call that person a master in physics, even though with a PhD. Scholar, not a master of that knowledge, let alone an authority in physics. Give me a break, you gotta do 30-some years and come up with something serious. I told you, for me to consider you an authority in something. One of our shuyukh, was a Hanafi in Syria, Shaykh Muhammad Hanafi, rahimahullah ta'ala. He used to say, one of our shuyukh used to say, I am disgusted with someone who tells me he's a Hanafi scholar and he has not studied the fiqh of Abu Hanifa for 30 years. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. So here's obviously the level of scholarship we have and we produce because we need them. Why? Because from the beginning of this century, the 20th, and the last century, Gregorian time, obviously you know what happened. I mean, colonization. Most Muslim country majorities were colonized. And obviously in any colonized society, education should be last. Right? Because education is power. And knowledge will set you free. But I'm supposed to prevent you from education. So I'll give you positions and give you businesses and give you things, but I will deprive you from education.
We looked, obviously, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the collapse of other places where there's Muslim majority countries. Here in India also, you had colonization by the British, etc., etc., etc. Muslims now look at what the West, they're mesmerized from the beginning of the century, 1900s. They look at the West, how come they're so advanced? How come they're so, because we were sleeping for a few hundred years. Huh? So now they said there's something wrong with us. All the success is in what the West does. So we dress like them, we act like them. Even the Sharia school, we make the Sharia schools like them because we feel that that's where the success is. If we have any bright children, guess where we'll send them? To them, to learn in their universities and acquire from their values and their structure and their traditions. Then if it's not enough, let's make them here. Let's import what they have and make it here. Let's send our smartest and brightest kids to study medicine, engineering, and pharmacy, and today now IT. And the kids that are losers, and losers in the sense they fail in everything, become Maulana. Go. You can't do anything. Go become Maulana. So, we send let me put it in a nicer word. We send the underachievers to be our leaders in the most important thing in our life, which is our faith. And then we say, what's wrong? Why can't we face up like Imam al-Ghazali in his time, like al-Razi in his time? They wrote these books refuting the philosophers of the time. Today you have our time's philosopher is Nietzsche. Our time's philosopher is Dawkins. Our time's philosopher is Harris. Yani those who write against the religion, specifically against Islam. Where are our Ghazalis, Imam Ghazalis? Where are our Imam Razis? Where are our Ahmadis? Where are our Maturidi? Where are those people? No. Don't put your hand here, don't put it here. If you put it here, you go to Jahannam. Put your hand here. Do these things. The mechanics of worship, we amplify them and we make them the criteria if you're good or bad. If you don't do the way I do and you don't understand the way I understand, you're no good. We're going into this fragmentation, that's why we're going nowhere. If we don't look at our faith the same way the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'een looked at it and start investing back in our deen, not only atheism is going to take from us. We can't answer these people because we started using the Christian way of saying it's a matter of faith. You either believe in it or you have no iman. While Islam believes it's a matter of faith, la shak, without a doubt. But Islam also believes it's a matter of fact, not just a matter of faith. We need to be invested in these sciences and so much that we also need to provide logical and philosophical answers to challenge, to stand up to the issues of the time. Not just say it's a matter of faith only. And in fact, when you look at Christians and Jews and other faith systems, they dealt and they're dealing with the issue of atheism that's rising in the world much better than we have. They have publications, they have things, they're doing something. So, the point that we're living in a bubble world, we're not affected. We pretend that we're not affected by anything. Well, wake up. You are. You are to the bones. 60 years ago, 50 years ago, you chose where to go. In every city there were good places and bad places. Every city has these things. You as a decent Muslim, you would not go to bad places, right? You know where the bad places are. You see people going there, but you don't go. Let alone take your wife and children there. Today, You don't have to go anywhere. TV is right in your bedroom. And it tells you all the bad thing there is. I'm not telling you everything about TV is bad. There are many good things also, good programs in TV. But you don't have to go anywhere for your mind and soul to be robbed from you. Your computer is right in front of you, and the TV is right in your bedroom and at the hands of all your children. It's funny how we care for our cars more than we care for our hearts and minds. Yeah, if you drive a diesel car, anybody drives a diesel car here? You like diesel cars, they last, huh? Okay. They make a loud noise, and that's why it's not good. If you drive a diesel and I come and I bring some Coca-Cola with me, I say, let me put some Coca-Cola in your engine. Would you like that? You say, that doesn't go? You're going to ruin my car. Oh. But you don't mind you and your children and all your family pouring all kind of information in your head and in your heart and changing everything about you, and you don't even feel it. And then you say, well, what's wrong? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.